Thank you, Erin, and I'm so pleased and excited to be here today because I have an opportunity of sharing about all the research that's going on and the research not only going on in the field, but some of the pieces that are supported by the society. So I think Erin did a really great job of going over where we are today. I think the piece is we know this affects a number of Canadians. This is an important health challenge for us, and we know that people are living longer. So when people live longer, there's better medications. We need to make sure the quality of life of people affected by MS is improved as well. So the MS Society is really a large leading supporter of MS research in Canada. Since 1948, we've provided over $175 million to research. That translates to between $7 to $10 million annually, and we do that in the form of grants, awards, education, and training. So thanks to this support, it has really cultivated an exceptional network of researchers who are leading contributors in the field, and not only in Canada, but internationally, and leading the stage. With that and all the investments in terms of all the stakeholders involved, there's been enormous progress has been made to date, and significant questions remain unanswered. So we still don't quite understand we have leads and we have a base of understanding, but we don't know the cause of MS, its potential prevention, how to repair it, and identifying new treatments that are more effective and can target things that we're currently not targeting. If we look at our investments in research over the last 10 years, we've certainly expanded that support for research and diversified those pieces into different areas. So we started, if we look 10 years ago, it was on the fundamental research. We had team grants and personnel awards. And if you look at the pie chart and the activities that we've expanded to different areas, new targeted opportunities of gaps we found in research, such as wellness. And I'll tell you about some of the other investments that we've invested in more recently. So we've definitely expanded that investment in research. The other piece that we've evolved over time is really to focus the needs of that research, focus more on the people affected by MS. So originally, we were viewed as a funder of research, and we provided grants to researchers very simply. But over time, we've really increased that activities to communicate those research findings so that it's in the hands of those people who are affected by MS. So you understand that you're a receiver of that research and that you're part of that process. And additionally, again, continuing to evolve and expand the engagement of people affected by MS as well in our review process. So how we actually decide to fund research, people affected by MS are integral in that process and part of that process, so that we're funding things that are connected to people. So we've engaged people affected by MS through research priorities and engagements, so activities where we ask people what are the most important research questions that are needed, and that's helped shape our research agenda and strategic design, as Erin shared with you this morning. So through the generous support, we've really cultivated an exceptional network of researchers, and you have many of them that are here today, which is really great. And we really are a leading contributor of that research, and we fund many different types of research, and I'll share some of that with you. So one key important piece that we do is we try to fund the next generation of researchers. So if you look at this slide, there's sort of a pipeline. So you go to university, you're an undergraduate, and then there's this middle part between becoming a full professor and a researcher investigator. That there's all this years of training that's required, and a lot of dedication and hard work to get to that next level. And so it's graduate work, so people doing their masters and PhDs, and fellowships doing their postdoctoral. So after they get their PhDs, they do this other piece. So we support this next generation pipeline to make sure that all the great work that the researchers are doing is being translated to the next generation, and we continue to build on that knowledge. The other piece is if we look at our distribution of funding, when we try to fund things, it's really across the board. We're targeting every area that we need to in terms of solving MS. And so we're looking at the cause and risk factors. So that could be things like genetics, modifiable risk factors, things such as how do you manage symptoms and improve quality of life, looking at things like exercise and rehab, and investing in those pieces. Other things like investing in therapy and clinical tool development. So when we do look at new potential drug agents or therapies, we need to make sure that those clinical trials can be done faster, better, and we can move new potential drugs through that pipeline faster. The other part is the mechanisms of disease. We still need to figure out at the cellular level, the smallest level of what's going on, why it happens, and then you can figure out new drugs in that space. How do you prevent that from happening? And so these fundamental questions still remain to be answered. The other piece that we do is we have access to all these really great experts in MS. So we bring together those research experts. They identify critical gaps and challenges, and we've had opportunities to develop recommendations or guidelines. And so some of the examples of that I wanted to share, and you may have already heard about it. But one piece is we brought together clinicians, researchers, other stakeholders together to talk about vitamin D. And so it's understood that this is a potential risk factor. So we gathered people together and said, what are the recommendations we can provide to people who are at risk or living with MS that they can have in hand and share with their family physician and understand what they should be taking and how you should measure and monitor that intake. There's other pieces that we've brought to supported a large group of clinicians, researchers, and other key stakeholders around pediatric clinical trials. So there are children who have MS. Oftentimes, and for valid reasons, children aren't part of clinical trials. But then physicians are left not knowing how to prescribe those medications, and we're left with not knowing how those medications will affect children. And so coming together to say, how do we do this in a very careful, thoughtful way where we can answer questions and provide the evidence that we need. The other piece is bringing the global community together to identify gaps and needs around solving progressive MS. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So in terms of some of the pieces, so I think I wanted to highlight some of the research that we're doing, some of the exciting pieces that are new and ongoing. Around tackling progressive MS, so we're taking multiple steps around that piece. Understanding progression in people with MS, so how does the disease progress, and answering those fundamental questions. And then I wanted to touch on other pieces that are in development, but something that to stay tuned into, and that we'll provide further updates on. So one exciting piece that we've done, and this has been ongoing for the last 7 years, I think, altogether, we're part of an international progressive MS alliance, and we're a founding and managing member of this group. It involves 16 members, in a sense, if you can see all the list of people. It's a society representatives, scientists, clinicians, fundraisers, patients, and policy experts are coming together to address progressive MS. There was a recognized need that we've made a significant progress in the relapsing remitting form of MS with a number of disease-modifying therapies available. But progressive MS it's difficult and it's challenging to target. And so through this alliance, we wanted to put that focus back on progressive disease. And so we wanted to make sure that the research community stayed focused, and through this alliance is an opportunity to do so. So people pooled resources together across all of these countries, and were able to fund research in this space. The last larger investment was in collaborative network awards, so 3 large teams of researchers who represented 40 researchers in 21 institutions in 9 countries. So we're maximizing the expertise across the world in MS, and in particular to tackle progressive MS. And these projects are sort of at the mid-year point, and they most recently reported what they're doing. So 2 of those projects are looking at new drug agents for progressive MS, and they're taking 2 entirely different approaches to get there. The 3rd project is a little bit different, and it's using artificial intelligence so that you can identify an outcome faster. And so you can see whether somebody's improving or not improving and responsive to different medications. So how do you test those drugs in a faster way? So those are at the midpoint. The 2 projects looking for new drug agents have already identified a number of potential targets. So we're excited about that. More work certainly needs to be done, but these are the 3 projects. The other part in parallel they've brought together implementation teams, they call them, who are coming together around 3 areas in progressive MS. So how do you do a clinical trial better? Understanding markers that you can use to do that better, and understand how people progress with the disease. And then how do you enhance well-being overall? How do you make someone's life better? Understanding symptoms and other approaches to improving symptoms. So those teams are together, and we're looking at ways of supporting those ideas that come out of those implementation teams and furthering those ideas. So I'd also like to share, so in terms of progressive MS, this is one of a large team grant that we've supported, and we're quite excited about it. So this is Anthony Feinstein. He's a researcher at Sunnybrook Health Sciences Centre, connected to the University of Toronto. And he's leading a very large study to look at cognition in people with progressive MS. And he's using a combined approach of cognitive rehabilitation, so doing sort of mind training in a sense, and combining that with aerobic exercise. And so there's never been a trial done on this study done on this large scale. It's across 11 sites in 6 countries. There'll be 360 people included to participate. And really looking at improving cognition. And cognition is one of the more important pieces, and cognitive deficits can affect employment, relationships, and quality of life. It's deemed one of the more important sort of symptoms to manage. And if this can be done through aerobic exercise and cognitive rehabilitation, this would be an important step forward. So we need evidence around this, and we're at the starting point of this project. So we're excited about where this will go and the results of this study, and how can it inform practice and knowledge to the community. The other piece is we've partnered with our US counterparts, the NMSS, to investigate lipoic acid. So lipoic acid is a natural product. It's known to be an antioxidant. It's a relatively inexpensive product. So at high doses, it has been shown to have promise in animal models. So there's research that indicates there's promise that it can reduce inflammation. So this is led by Dr. Rebecca Spain from Oregon Health and Science University. And she's leading a phase 2 clinical trial. So we're supporting Mark Friedman in Canada, who's having a Canadian site to test lipoic acid for progressive MS. And they're evaluating the safety and potential benefits of this. So this could be sort of an add-on drug to potential medications that people are taking, or a piece that could be used for progressive MS. The other exciting piece that you may have heard about, this is a piece that's been in development for the last couple of years. So Dr. Scott Patton is here, and he'll be talking more about this today, so I won't say too much about it. But this has really been a partnership with the MS Society, Brain Canada, Biogen, and Roche, and altogether, everybody's putting forward almost $10 million in support to this. It's led by Dr. Ji-Won Oh, and she's a neurologist and researcher at St. Mike's Hospital and connected to the University of Toronto. And the purpose is really to understand progression in MS. So this is an opportunity. You often get a snapshot of people at different stages, but this is a real opportunity to follow 1,000 people with MS over 5 years and at different stages and subtypes of disease. And it's really to understand, we're gathering data around following 1,000 people to understand clinical, their health records, their health visits, all of those pieces together with their environmental components and health system factors, to understand how those all come together in the progression of the disease. So through this investment, and we hope it's 5 years right now, but we hope to follow people over a longer term with future investment. And we can really understand the mechanisms of disease to answer questions. Through that, you can identify better drugs, better treatments, and better approaches to that. You have real-world data that you can look at to understand how to improve treatments and practice guidelines and have an ultimate impact in that space. So Dr. Scott Patton will provide a better overview, I'm sure, and a more detailed view. The other piece, as Erin mentioned, is stem cells. So stem cells have been piece. So the bone marrow transplant for MS has been quite successful in terms of rebooting the immune system. So this is a treatment that uses chemotherapy to sort of wipe out one's immune system, and then uses bone marrow transplant stem cells and transplants those into people with MS. And what they found, and we've been supporting this over the last 10 to 15 years in terms of some of this work by Dr. Mark Friedman. And so there's been tremendous success in terms of the original group that received the treatment, that they had no new relapses or brain lesions. 70% showed no sign of disability progression, 40% experienced unexpected recovery of function, and there was one particular patient that did die of complications. And that was related to the chemotherapy piece. They have made modifications to the treatment since then, and are continuing to give that as part of the standard of care in Ottawa. So in terms of where this is, so certain eligible patients are referred for this procedure. Certainly it's a conversation with your neurologist in terms of exploring treatment options. And it's certainly intended for a select group of people that have highly aggressive inflammatory MS that has been unresponsive to treatment. So this has shown some promise in terms of supporting a particular select group of people for MS. The other piece that we're developing and have supported and anticipating outcomes is a mesenchymal stem cell trial. So another type of stem cell. In this particular treatment, which has advantages, there's no need for chemotherapy. And so that's one piece that's an advantage. So we supported a phase 2 randomized double-blind controlled trial, and it involved people with various stages of MS. And they were looking at whether, first of all, answering the question, there's been evidence that there's promise of mesenchymal stem cells, but looking to see whether this is actually safe for treatment in people with MS, and whether it can control inflammation and promote repair. So there were 2 sites. So this is an international trial. The MS Society funded 2 sites, one in Ottawa and Winnipeg. And the researchers, it's been an ongoing study over the number of years, but the researchers have just sort of got the data in August, and were able to share very preliminary data with everybody in September. And so they know that the treatment is safe. That was one question that they had. Although it did not, based on their level of data that they were able to collect, was not able to show that it reduced the number of lesions in the treatment group. However, they did see a trend toward decreasing relapses in those who were treated with stem cells. So while I think this is somewhat promising, I think they're still looking at the data to look at possible outcomes, and so looking at, and we'll further dig into that, but we're still excited about the potential in this space. The other piece that I wanted to share is, so we have a partnership with CIHR. So CIHR is the Canadian Institute for Health Research, and they are our primary health research funder in Canada. And so we have a partnership with them to support a team grant on cannabis research. And we're providing together $1.5 million to support that research, to understand cannabis and how to manage symptoms associated with multiple sclerosis. There's an immense need in terms of knowledge and evidence in this space to advance our understanding of its use. And we really want to understand the benefits, risks, and harms, as well as how do we support policies and regulatory models that benefit everybody. So this is really early days, but we're looking to support a project in this space by early next year. So overall, there have been a number of, over the last decade, if we look back, there have been a number of new treatments for MS that have been developed. We provide a lot of support for global leaders in MS research to support the research that's most important to making an impact. We're working to develop capacity in that trainees and early career researchers, so that early stage, so that we're ensuring a pipeline of researchers who will continue to forge forward. We're looking at research from a way that eliminates borders to research. We want the best ideas out there and looking for ways that can maximize those ideas and cross-fertilization across the world. And we're looking at taking on ideas with potential high reward, but high risks, because it's important to take those risks that could lead to high reward for those impacted by MS. And we're engaging people with MS, donors, researchers, and the enterprise, and it's all about accelerating the research piece. So I'm excited to be here today. I think we have a really great lineup of speakers and researchers. So it's great that we have Catherine and Michael here from the University of Saskatchewan, and Helen Tremlett from the University of British Columbia, who's going to talk about the microbiome and those pieces, which are so fascinating. And Dr. Scott Patton, who's going to talk more about CanProCo, as I mentioned. So how do you keep updated on the research piece? So I do have a table in the other room, so I will sit at that table at some point. You can talk to me in more detail, or you find me anywhere. I will share that with you. But we often put some of these updates, we call them MS updates. So the latest research, we post that through our website. There's also pieces to know all the research. So I only did a snapshot of a few select projects. We fund a lot of projects in the research. So you can spend, our website itemizes those projects, so you can dive into that piece too. We also have a lot of resources like treatments in development or hot topics that are on our website that you can gain more information about. We write a blog where we share information through that blog. We tweet a lot through Dr. Karen Lee's Twitter, if you're following. We also try to bring that information together so that you're informed in a fast way. So if you sign up for our research and action, you can get a summary of our blog and links to all those pieces, as well as any updates that have happened over a period of time. So that's a very fast way to sort of see all the pieces that are happening in terms of the research space. So I think that's all I have, but thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, there's time for that. Yeah, thank you.
I think we've got some staff with some microphones. Can you just wave? Rochelle and Stacy, if anyone has questions for Dr. Pam. Sorry.
Yes, you mentioned that there is money available for research that is happening. I'm just curious whether Dr. Joseph Buttigieg, I hope Buttigieg in Regina at the U of R with I call it the Miracle Mouse research. Is he receiving funding from your organization?
Yes, I wouldn't know offhand, but we can dive into that piece together. We can talk and I can look that up.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. It may be. So we do support animal models, though. There's lots of research we support. That would be around the basic mechanisms and clinical therapy tools. So it fits within the type of research that we could fund. Yeah.
Hi, I just have a quick question. If you're interested in becoming involved in the studies or participating, does the MS Society help people connect with that?
Yeah, for sure. So at the table, and I should have added it here, but there are opportunities to participate. So we do, so people who participate in our research reviews and enterprise, we call them community representatives. And so there's an opportunity to apply to be a community representative. We have an annual competition each year. So that people are assigned proposals. It is a body of work to do, so it's a commitment. And we go through reviews in January every year. And there may be other opportunities that we engage our community representatives in. So that's one way to get involved. The other piece is that on our website we have a research portal. And so there's, if we are funding a study or there's another study that we think the community would be interested in participating in, you can look at research studies that are in your area. And you can decide whether that's the right fit for you, and you can choose to participate in that research study. So those are two ways that you can get involved. So CanProCo, for instance, if you are in that area, that would be one opportunity, but there's other studies in every area.